Hi everyone, welcome to OET 369. I'm really glad to see you all and I hope you are all doing very well. Okay, in today's video, we are going to look at different writing tasks. When I say that, we are going to assume different nurses as our readers today. Okay, so in the OET profession or for writing for nurses, it's quite common for them to ask, being a nurse, you may be asked to write a letter to a different nurse. Okay, so we will examine the different roles that you may be asked to write to. Okay, for example, you imagine your reader as a community nurse. You imagine your reader as another nurse. So we are going to see what are the things that you may commonly include in such case and what are the things that you commonly exclude in such cases. I hope this is going to help you out. This video is purely based on my research into the OET exam papers, and this also includes, generally the UK nursing practice. Being here, I'm well aware what are the nurses may require to do in their job role. So I've also done a recollection of all those, and that's how I've created this, video. Asking you to write to different nurses or imagine you as different nurses. You imagine different nurses as your readers. Okay, so let us take different scenarios, and the first scenario we are going to look at is you are going to write to a community nurse. So your reader can be a community nurse. What are the situations that you may be asked to write to a community nurse? Let us think. So situation number one, when you request a home visit for a patient to the community nurse. So you can write a letter to a community nurse requesting home visits. That can be a scenario number one. Okay, so let's see what is going to happen in such cases. In such cases, let us think or let us imagine most of the time the patients are going to be very well. Most of the time the patients get discharged into their home or return to their own home, and you are just asking the community nurses to follow up. So most of the time here, you have to concise the admission complaints. Okay, you have to give relevance to the patient's current condition. Okay, and it's quite natural because we are asking them to home visit, you may have to explain the home situation. For example, actually, do they live alone? Yes, specify that. Or are they living with family? Okay, if so, who are there in that family? Do they have any communication needs? Do they wear glasses? Do they wear, hearing aids? So this is another thing. This is another thing that you may need to include in your letter. Okay, so anytime when you are writing a letter to a community nurse requesting home visit, you will be including the social history because they actually need to visit that patient's home, and they have the right to know that. What is the situation at home? You also describe the patient's current status. So is the patient ready for discharge? Or if the patient is getting discharged tomorrow, mention that. So they can start their home visits after that. If it's today, mention that. So they can organize that accordingly. And you can also say, what is the current status? So are they going home with, and without any improvement, and you've just decided to carry on the things in the community? So if that's the case, so give an outline of their current situation, give a concise idea about their admission complaints and the treatment that you've done in the hospital. You will say about the social history, and then you will have a close look at the discharge plan and describe that. Okay, so that will be normally a case format when you write a letter to community nurse requesting home visit. I hope this is clear. Now, community nurse, what is the next situation that you may be asked to write to a community nurse? Well, I think if a patient is getting transferred from, or if the patient is moving from one locality to another locality, it is quite natural, or it's quite a necessary thing that you may have to hand over this particular nurse, so this particular patient, to that nurse. So that is another scenario you can expect. A transfer letter to a community nurse. Okay. So when you write a transfer letter, you have to think this patient is completely new for this community nurse. So this nurse should know the relevant history associated with the patient. This nurse also should know the relevant social history because it's a community nurse and they may be required to do home visits and things. So you may have to expand the relevant social history. You may also have to say the main issues and the plan of transfer, or what are they supposed to do. Based on that, you will be categorizing your case notes. So here also, you will give a brief idea about the patient's current status. You will give a brief idea about the patient's social history and medical history. And also, you will explain about the plan after discharge or transfer. Okay, so that is how generally your layout will be when you do a transfer letter to a community nurse. I hope this is clear. So these are the two main situations that you may be asked to write a letter to a community nurse. And I hope the content selection was helpful for you, will be helpful for you in future when you get these types of letters. Now, let us take the next job role or next type of nurse that you may be asked to write a letter to. Nursing, or a nurse in an acute care. An acute care can be a hospital ward, a nurse in an emergency department, or it can be a theatre nurse, or it can be, any clinical nurse. Okay, all those things can be said as a nurse in an acute setting. So when you are asked to write a letter to a nurse in an acute setting, what you have to remember yourself is this patient is going to have some acute care needs. Here, you may not have to include those social histories which you have included before when you've written to community nurse. You are probably going to say about the current situation of the patient, about the complaints he or she had on admission, and about the treatment that we have given to this patient in detail. You also look at the plan after the transfer, or after after the transfer to a particular nurse, and what is the important job that particular nurse has to do. Based on that, you will be formulating your first paragraph. Okay, so imagine, or you have to always think that this is going to be acute. So you may have to say the acute problems of the patient and the acute treatment of the patient. And if necessary, sometimes you may ask the reader to liaise with the family. In that case, you may have to tell briefly about the family, but not in very detail. Okay, so those are the things that you may have to plan when you write a letter to a nurse in an acute setting. Okay, so that was situation number 2, nurse in an acute setting. Now, what is next? Okay, so the next thing we probably get is writing a letter to a school nurse. You can be a school nurse. Okay, so imagine you are a nurse. You found a child. For example, you've been taking care of his mother, but you've seen that the child would need a school nurse referral, or the child may be visiting your surgery on a daily basis, and you just think that you need a referral. This child needs a referral to a school nurse. So basically, in this situation, we have to see why are you referring this child. If you're referring for any psychological issues, you may have to explain the environmental situation, or like the factors that affect. So it can be the school environment, it can be the family environment basically, and the siblings and the parents, and any disease condition, you have to talk about that. So for a school nurse, you just have to see what is the role of the school nurse, or what is the task that the school nurse is supposed to do. And based on that task and based on that plan, you just need to go back to the case notes and select the case notes appropriate to that particular thing. Okay. And the next one probably would be is writing to a nurse in a non-acute setting. So it can be a nurse, a rehabilitation nurse, or it can also be a nurse in a nursing home. It's quite common that you get these situations here. So when you write a letter to a rehabilitation nurse, for example, if it's a diabetic rehabilitation nurse, if you say, you don't have to state or you don't have to elaborate the diabetic problems or the acute problems of this patient. You are asking to rehabilitate. So you may have to look at the social factors or the daily factors of that patient in detail than that particular patient. Okay, so rehabilitating means that you are looking at their daily life and getting them back to their daily life. So you may need to explain about their daily life. You may have to give briefly an idea about the patient's current situation. But you wouldn't expand that, or you wouldn't explain that in detail as you did to a nurse in an acute care setting. Okay, and when I say writing a letter to a nurse in a nursing home, this can be a known case for the reader, or this can also be an unknown case for the reader. Most of the time, you will be asked in these situations, the patient has to go back to that particular nursing home. So in that case, the nursing home nurse will know the patient details very clearly. So you just need to say about the admission complaints. Well, if the admission complaints has happened in the nursing home itself, if they're aware about it, I don't think you have to say that. But whatever you have noted on your admission or your findings on your admission, you may have to feedback that to them. Again, concise it. You may have to concisely say what are the treatment that has been done for that particular patient. But look at the discharge plan in detail and see what are the things that they may need to follow. Okay, and that will be you expand. You wouldn't say any medical history. You wouldn't say any social history if that is already known. Okay. So today we have seen writing a letter to a community nurse and the different situations this can happen. We have also seen writing a letter to a nurse in an acute setting and the different situations that you may be asked to write to. You've also seen writing a letter to a school nurse. You've also seen writing a letter to a non-acute setting nurse. Okay, I think that's for today, but I will come back with more types of nurses that you may be asked in the next video. So we will see about specialist nurses and we'll have to see about different other nurses as well. So we'll see that in the next video. So I hope this was useful for all of you. For our online course details, you can log on to our website english369.uk. If you would like to talk personally, or if you would like to know things in detail, you can also WhatsApp me. I've included my WhatsApp number with the description. And you can also email me at oet369@gmail.com for any specific queries. I hope you're preparing very well for your exams. Continue to practice. You've got lots of opportunities waiting to come to you, and I hope to see you all soon, very shortly. Thank you so much, and keep on supporting OET 369. Bye-bye.